Hey guys, and welcome back to the show. I am your host, Megan Hardy, and I'm the founder of Fitness Uncharted, which is a women's health and fitness coaching company that I created to help you build muscle, lose body fat, improve your metabolism, and that way you can feel healthy and confident in your 30s, 40s, 50s, and beyond. And today, guys, this is actually a special episode for me because at the time that I'm recording this episode, anyway, I realize that this is going to be my 53rd episode. I record them like weeks in advance and do sometimes move them around though. So who knows if this will end up being the actual 53rd episode. But it's the 53rd that I'm recording as of right now. And I release one episode per week, which means that I have been consistent with my podcast for the last year, which is kind of cool. I'm like almost like feeling a little bit emotional about it. And that's because like me starting the podcast, I was actually one, I had imposter syndrome with starting a podcast. I'm like, who am I to start a podcast? And then secondly, I just like my perfectionist tendencies came out and I was just like second guessing myself and everything about it and really procrastinated starting my podcast. So the fact that we're like hitting that 1 year mark is actually really special. I hesitated to start it out of fear of not being perfect, out of fear of not being able to be consistent, especially when I'm a person who really appreciates and understands the importance of consistency. I actually kind of used that as a cop out in a way to procrastinate starting my podcast because one of the most important things, if whether or not you're in the podcast space or not, I'll share a little info with you, but it's really important to be consistent with releasing your podcast schedule, the same day, same time, same hour every week, and being really consistent with that so people can come to expect when and know when to expect your podcast. And that was something that I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can be that consistent and super consistent with this. And I kind of used that as like, well, I guess I can't start it yet. So it was like those perfectionist tendencies. And I still can think back to like just, for anyone who's like considering starting something that feels scary to you, one really big thing for me was having those people in my corner who support you no matter what. And I can still remember recording my first podcast episode and sending it to my sister, just like sending the audio file to her and to my mom. And just like my heart was racing, like waiting for their feedback. I'm like, why aren't they texting me back sooner, telling me what they think of it? Because it was so important to me to get that feedback from, some of the people closest to me. And like I was on cloud nine when they responded and they were of course very encouraging and like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. So it was really sweet. But having those people in your corner too is crucial. But today, that's really kind of what I want to talk about in honor of it being the 53rd podcast episode. I want to relate it back to you guys. And first, also say thank you if you're someone who's been listening for a while, just like thank you for being on this journey with me, and just being part of this community. A lot of you guys are probably also in my free Facebook group or even clients, and I just again like thank you for being my tribe and my people, and being part of this. And this is for you, so thank you for giving me something that I really enjoy doing, and it's something that gives me passion and a purpose. So thank you very much. I appreciate you. And I want to relate this back to like how you can make your fitness goals a reality and really get out of your own way to make your fitness goals a reality. And so by doing so, in this episode, I want to talk about really what successful people have in common because, success is not like it's not really a magic formula, but there are some underlying factors of people who are successful with whatever goal they have in life, whether that's financial goals, marriage goals, family goals, fitness goals, health goals, you name it. they do have some underlying factors that they all have in common. And before we before we jump in to that list, I just wanted to even share some of the things that helped me personally and some of this with starting the podcast and steps that helped me, get over myself and finally do the dang thing instead of, just thinking on it and thinking on it and thinking on it. And that's actually one thing that Ed Milet talks about. If you have not heard of Ed Milet, go check out his podcast, The Ed Milet Show. It's fantastic. But he talks about thoughts, how people will do thought stacking. And that's where you just think about something over and over and over again, thinking that by thinking about it, it will somehow magically help the situation out. You're not actually doing anything different about it. You're just thinking about it over and over and over and over again. You're like a broken record thinking about this one thought, this one thing that you haven't been able to figure out yet. And that really does no good. And that's kind of what I was doing with starting my podcast back, a year ago. And so what really helped me, one thing that helped me get started was starting super, super small. I literally had to break it down into like little micro bites because there were so many things that I needed to do, like, how to get, I didn't know about the cover photo or like the intro outro music or I didn't even know like, okay, what platforms do I post it on? How do I post it? How do I record it? How do I do a video? How do I do what equipment do I need for it? Like all these questions, I was like, oh my gosh, I don't have time for this. I'm a full-time business owner and coach and, wife and dog mom. And I don't have time to like figure all this out. And that was another reason why I procrastinated it. I was like, you know what? I can do this. First of all, let me change my thought process. I can do this. Let me start super, super, super small. And today my one task is going to be a really, really small task in the direction of starting a podcast. And that looked like literally day one. I was like, okay, let me pull up Canva and create some artwork for my cover photo and just play around with it for the cover art. Right. And I'm like, okay, that was day one. I was like, oh, that was actually kind of fun. Okay, cool. Well, that's done. All right, next step. Okay, figure out how to find intro, outro music and how to get the rights for that. And okay, that's my next step. And then, next step is how do I actually record a podcast? Okay, let me figure that out. Let me ask around. So it was literally just these micro baby steps. And that's what I want to encourage you guys to do with your health and fitness goals. Like stop looking at the whole mountain and instead break it down into smaller steps. I don't know if you've heard the phrase, but it's how do you eat an elephant? You eat it one bite at a time. If you try to eat the whole elephant at once, there's no way that's going to work, right? You have to eat it one bite at a time, which is kind of a gruesome analogy, but go with me here, right? So like you just have to break it down and have to look at the next step in front of you instead of the whole mountain. And the other thing that really, really helped me with starting my podcast and being consistent with it is planning ahead. So I started out with baby steps. And then I was like, okay, let me plan ahead. And before I even released my podcast, I had 4 episodes pre-recorded and I try to keep it that way currently. And I try to have a minimum of 4 episodes like in the bank, pre-recorded in preparation for, that one random week that maybe I'm not able to record and I still have these backups, right? Because that's happened several times, but I'm like, sweet, I was still able to be consistent with posting, and having my episodes loaded and ready to go because I was prepared and had these things pre-recorded and was pre-planned out. So pre-planning is so important and will help you with being as consistent as possible, especially when life gets crazy and the waves come. And then another thing too is like recognizing along with that consistency is key. Yes, but don't do as I did. Don't let that be the thing that holds you back from starting. So I think a lot of us are really afraid of failure. I'm really speaking to my perfectionists here. I am a recovering perfectionist myself, and I procrastinated and procrastinated, starting it and starting the podcast. And I really just set myself back. Like I would have just been a little bit further along now if I had just started it sooner and just started with those baby steps sooner. And, don't let consistency or the fear of not being consistent enough or the fear of failing sometimes keep you from actually starting. Like you probably will fail. You will at some point fail, but don't let that be the thing that keeps you from starting. So those are just some things that have helped me on my podcasting journey, but you can apply that to anything health and fitness in that space. Like I think many of us, especially because we've experienced failure in the past, especially in the dieting world, like how many diets have you tried and failed? How many programs, how many things have you done to try to lose weight or, get in better shape? And, you may have gotten results, but you lost them, you know, this time a year later, you lose the results, you're right back to square one where you started, right? That's such a defeating feeling. And it kind of trains us to not want to take risks in the future. But that's how we're surely going to stay stuck. And that's what I always talk about too with ladies who are always or, ever hesitant about starting a new program or something new. I'm like, I get that. I totally get it. I've been burned in the past too. Like I have done coaching programs and things like that where it didn't go as I thought or planned. But I'm like, don't let that one burn you twice because you choose not to do something in your future that could actually accelerate your results and take you further, take you forward. That's when that one thing that burns you once is actually burning you twice. It's burning you currently because you're not taking action toward making positive change because you're so scared of getting burned again, which in reality, because you're so scared of getting burned again, you're actually burning yourself again because you're not taking that action that's going to take you in the direction of your goals, the direction you want to go. So I get it, but we have to push past that fear of failure. We have to feel the fear and do it anyway. That's how we make progress. And that's what the most successful people do. And so that's what I want to share with you, just a couple of tips of what successful people have in common. Because if you actually kind of analyze people that you perceive as successful, you're going to notice commonalities. Like I do this often. Like there's a lot of people in the leadership and business space and fitness space, but that I really look up to as successful people. Ed Milet is one of them. And, it's just, I love what he's about. But I'm like, okay, like, what are these things like, you might think Lewis Howes or Tony Robbins or who are these people? Like, what do they have in common? What are these traits that they have. And you're going to find a lot of commonalities. One of those being clear goals. People who are successful have clear, specific goals that they work towards. They are not wishy-washy. They are not like, just hopeful and wishing. They're actually setting specific goals and they know what they want to achieve and they actually set actionable steps in place to reach those objectives and those goals. And they will actually write them down and share them with other people. That's something that I'm trying to get better at. I'm like not a journaler at all, but I do try to write down my goals, especially like my yearly and quarterly goals. And that's what I'm working to get better at because simply by writing it down and putting pen to paper can help. And then also sharing it with other people, sharing it with those who can hold you accountable, who you can go to for support or ask questions. All of that's really going to help. And I know with starting my podcast, even sharing that with those people closest to me, like that was kind of a layer of accountability. Like, okay, I'm actually doing this thing. Like I'm doing it. So share it with others. Like get coaches if you need it. I work with several coaches right now myself in different spaces and I need them there to help me take the action needed towards my goals. So set clear goals. Another thing for that successful people have in common is they are persistent and resilient, like hella persistent and resilient. They understand that setbacks and failures are going to happen. It is inevitable. And I think that's the thing that we are all trying to avoid. We are so scared of setbacks and failures. And by being so scared of it, we are literally causing us to fail, causing us to not make any progress. And, successful people, they are persistent through the failure. They are resilient and they do not let failure deter their progress. Instead, they are learning from failures and they're adapting and they're persevering until they succeed. So that is one thing. If I could work on one thing in 2024, it's probably perseverance, and resilience. The more that we can be resilient people, the stronger we'll be and the more successful that we'll be. Another thing that they have in common is continuous learning. This is huge. And this is something that becomes even more and more important as we age too. I think, especially like oftentimes we're looking at the end goal as like retirement. I'm like, man, that's such a like lackluster goal. Like, what do you do when you retire? Sit around? And they actually show like a lot of people really decline after retirement because they're not stimulating their minds. They're not getting that that learning and that growth. Like we thrive when we are learning and growing. If we stop growing, we start dying. So, continuous learning is so crucial, and successful people are really the lifelong learners. They are always looking to learn something new. They are the ones that are actively seeking out new knowledge and new skills and experience that will help them grow both personally and professionally. And this can be something so simple, you guys, as like listening to podcasts. I'm a huge fan of listening to podcasts in leadership space, in the health and fitness space, in marriage space, anything that I want to learn more about and or acquire new skills. Like I'll listen to a podcast while I'm driving or walking or showering, and it's so simple and so easy. Or reading books or even audiobooks, just always being that continuous learner. And I think the other thing too is to ask good questions. If you are wanting to get better in a certain space, find people who are already successful in that space and ask them questions. Like ask them how they got there. Like if you want to get more fit and healthy, go ask a fit person how they got, fit and healthy. Granted, I that is the one caveat in the fitness and health space. A lot of times people don't do the healthiest things to get there. So you got to also filter that information out sometimes. But, if you're looking for, let's say, the financial space, someone who got really, successful and is really wealthy, how did they start? What was their starting point? Most people who are really wealthy did not just like fall into wealth. They grew from the ground up. Yes, you have the people who had wealth handed to them, but a lot of people they started from ground zero. And yes, you also have the people who maybe are getting wealthy from like selling drugs and whatnot. So again, you have to filter out the advice, because I wouldn't suggest going and getting advice from, a drug dealer, like, oh, sweet, you're living in your massive crib because you sell drugs. No, like, okay, you have to ask the right people the right questions, but like always be a learner. That's the point that we're trying to make here, is just focus on continuous learning. And I think that's the other thing too, is like, even for myself, I'm like, okay, I've had a lot of success in the health and fitness space. I would say I am successful there, but I do not think I know it all. Like I know there is so much that I don't know. And actually, the more that I learn, the more I actually realize I don't know. Truly, the more I realize, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so much more information. And that's actually where the imposter syndrome can come from. Cause I'm like, oh my gosh, I know so much. And at the same time, I know nothing. Right. So it's like accepting that fact and just being okay with being curious and wanting to learn. Just be that lifelong learner. Anyway, on to the next. The next one that successful people have in common is time management. Oh my gosh. Effective time management is crucial for success. And successful people prioritize, tasks. They focus on the high value activities first. So we talked about the sum in a previous episode, but like prioritizing that list and choosing those high value activities to complete first. And they also manage their time efficiently to maximize their productivity. So I won't go into super detail in that, because we've had a previous episode on how to make the most of your time and how to put more time back in your day. So if you missed that, go listen to that episode. Another thing they have in common is self-discipline. So they have the self-discipline to, first of all, stay focused on their goals and then follow through with their plans, even when they are faced with distractions or temptations. And one thing I'll say about that is, they have really good systems in place to fall back on, because most successful people, they are not, they're not that much more disciplined than you are. A lot of times people might ask, I've gotten asked myself, like, how are you so disciplined? I'm not truly, I don't have a discipline superpower. I just have better systems in place than you do, probably. Like I have a very, very specific structured system of when I work out, what I eat, when I grocery shop. Like, okay, I have backup plans, I have a system. And that's where, most people, they think it's just a self-discipline thing, and it's like some kind of human or character flaw, like, oh, I just don't have the self-discipline. No, you just don't have the support or the systems that you need in place to carry out that self-discipline. And there's a saying, we don't rise to the level of our goals, we fall to the level of our systems. So if you want to improve your self-discipline, improve your systems. Okay. The next thing that they have in common is a positive mindset. OMG. I feel like every single one of these, I'm like, nope, this is the main one. Nope, this is the main one. This one's more important. This one's more important. But this might be the most important one. Maintaining a positive attitude, even in challenging situations, that can really impact your success. So, I know it's easy to let the environment impact our internal environment. The external can really impact our internal, but it is so important for us to protect our minds and our thoughts, because that will impact our future success. And successful people, they really have a growth mindset, and they're going to view obstacles as, hey, this is an opportunity for growth and for improvement. Like, yeah, did I really F that up? Yep, I sure did. Or did that not go according to plan? Yep, sure didn't. Like, here we are. But they're like, okay, this is actually an opportunity for me to learn from this, to grow from it, and to be able to do better the next time. I will say, as a leader and a business owner, this is something I deal with all the time, because there's so many things for me that are like new. I'm like, okay, I've never handled this before. I've never had this situation happen before. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I could look at it as an obstacle. I could see it as a problem, or I could go, you know what? This is a new opportunity for me to grow, for me to be a better communicator, for me to be a better leader, for me to be, know how to handle this situation the next time. Instead, I can see it as that opportunity for growth. And that's so important. And so when you have things come up on your health and fitness journey that you see as a problem, and you're like, oh my gosh, you could go negative, right? You could have a negative mindset and go like, this is such a freaking issue. Like, I just don't have the time. I just don't have the money. I just don't have the resources. I just blah, 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 blah. Like all the things you don't have. And you could see it as such a huge problem. Or you go, you know what? This is an opportunity for me to be, a better time manager, for me to be a better planner, for me to, prove to myself that I can do this. Like, look at it as an opportunity versus a problem. Okay. And this is really that classic, like, I can do this person versus the I can't do this person. And the I can people, the people who have that positive mindset and are I can oriented, they ask questions. The people who are the I can't negative mindset, they make statements. And so just think, a question opens up your mind and opens up the possibilities, while a statement shuts it down. So if you, for example, are like, okay, like I don't have time to work out. Like I just don't have the time. I'm just so busy. Like, and you might genuinely be so busy. You could be a mama of 18 children and, single mom working 18 jobs, 18 children, right? Like you might be the busiest person in the world. But if you say, I just don't have the time to work out, statement, boom, shut it down, right? Okay. You definitely won't have the time ever to work out because you just told yourself that. Instead, go, you know what? I am so busy. I am very busy. How can I create the time for myself to work out? Literally ask the question. That completely changes the game. And now it opens up your mind to possibilities of, okay, like what could I move around? What could I outsource? What extra help could I get? What workouts could I do with my kids? How could I involve my kid in the workout, right? It opens up your mind versus a statement, which shuts it down. And so, like, guys, that positive mindset, like, it's not just like woo woo, be positive. It's literally the difference between you seeing potential in, the possibilities versus you shutting something down and not moving any closer to your goals. So it's so, so, so important. But let's move on to the next. So the next one is adaptability. This one's huge as well. And this is the ability to adapt to changing circumstances. And really being able to embrace, new opportunities, which is crucial for success, especially in today's fast-paced world. Like we have to be adaptable. It's like basically survival of the fittest, right? Like we have got to be able to adapt when things are constantly changing. And, we talked about this in recent episodes, so I won't go like super deep into this one, but being flexible is a superpower, like being able to roll with the punches. Having a plan B, C, D, E, and F is crucial, especially if you are, a working woman or a mama, like, and you have things that don't go according to plan. Having that backup plan, because things aren't going to go according to plan, is going to set you up for so much success. And also, if you can mentally prepare yourself to know, like, okay, I'm going to experience setbacks and challenges, it allows you kind of the mindset of being more adaptable, where you're not going to get so defeated when things do go wrong. Because you're like, yep, I knew this was going to happen. That's okay. What can I do? Right? Again, ask yourself the question, what can I do? Instead of making a statement like, shoot, well, I can't do that anymore. Right? So just being adaptable and flexible. And then another thing they have in common is responsible risk taking. So this is what I was talking about at the beginning of the episode with my own, experience with starting the podcast, right? Like I was like, it was a risk, but I was not really taking a response. I wasn't really doing responsible risk taking, because I was being too risk cautious, right? So like, yes, you have to weigh the risks, and you have to kind of weigh that um, risk reward cost benefit, but you have to be responsible, but you also are going to have to take some risks. The most successful people are not afraid to take calculated risks in pursuit of their goals. I'll say that again. They're not afraid to take calculated risks in pursuit of their goals. And so that's also where, if you're the person who is the perfectionist and you want all the details and all the information, I would encourage you to not be too calculated. Like, yes, gather the information you need to make a smart decision for yourself, but also don't let that hang you up. Pursuit of the goal is more important than knowing all the details. Like sometimes we just have to get started. But, responsible risk takers, they are weighing the potential rewards against the risks that are involved, and they're willing to step out of their comfort zones when necessary. So just because you're making a calculated risk or taking a calculated risk doesn't mean that it's going to be in your comfort zone. Change doesn't happen in our comfort zone. We have to step outside of that. So that's the other thing I would encourage you is, if you're thinking about making a decision, but you're feeling uncomfortable about it, that's okay. That's actually like, congratulations, you're normal. Like it's okay to feel uncomfortable, because it's something new for you. That doesn't mean it's a wrong thing. It just means it's outside of your comfort zone. And that's also where change happens. And then the last thing, guys, is successful people, they have passion and a sense of purpose. That's really what drives like so many successful people. Yes, you'll have the people who are just driven because they're money hungry, and, they have like ill intentions and whatever. But most successful people, and especially the ones that I'm looking at and look up to and admire, they have a sense of passion and purpose that drives them. They are deeply committed to what they do. And that's really the thing that's fueling their quote unquote motivation or perseverance, like especially during challenging times. We might think that someone just has so much motivation or so much self discipline, but no, they have the systems in place. They have those other things we've talked about, and they also have a passion and a purpose. Like I will say, it is not easy to be a business owner. It is not easy to be an entrepreneur. Like I had a very cushy corporate job before doing what I do now, but I had no passion behind that. And also, if you're someone who is working a corporate job and you're like, well, it's not really a passion project. Well, there's ways that even if you aren't in something that's like, hey, your own business or your own calling in that way, there's still ways you can find passion and purpose in what you're doing. Like, even if you're working at McDonald's, like, finding passion and purpose in what you do. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to go start your own business or something, but that passion and purpose is what drives us. That's what makes the go-getters a go-getter. It's like, hey, I want to do this thing to the best of my ability. I want to do it so well. And having that passion and that purpose is also the thing that can kind of give us hope for the future as well. I know that's something for me that's keeps me coming back day in and day out because I'm like, okay, this is something that drives me. I have passion and I have purpose behind this. I know what I'm doing has purpose. There's guys, there's probably a lot more that I could add to this list, but in respect of time, I'll kind of wrap it up and leave it here for now. So I would just say, like, if you are a perfectionist and or a procrastinator, or if say procrastinate because you're a perfectionist, which is actually a thing. I'm a recovering perfectionist, and I procrastinate not because I'm lazy, but because I'm like, oh, I can't do this unless it's perfect. Like I can't do this yet because I can't do it perfectly. And again, that's just another form of procrastination, right? Um, but if that's you, stop. Like, please stop doing that. Instead, start to chunk it down into bite-sized pieces, like we talked about, and just take the next step. And, don't wait for motivation because motivation is fleeting. Like motivation is a feeling and feelings are fleeting. And there's my new favorite saying is choices lead and feelings follow. So a lot of times we're waiting for the feeling to get up and going. We're waiting to feel motivated. We're waiting for the feeling. And that's why we're not successful. Instead, we have to take the actions and we have to make choices. Choices lead and feelings follow. And also the other thing, guys, don't wait for the perfect circumstances or the perfect time because truth be told, there isn't one. There is not a perfect time. There is not going to be a perfect circumstance. Like there's never going to be the perfect amount of money, the perfect, time to get started on something. Like life is always going to be crazy just in different ways, so don't wait for that. And you are going to be so much more successful if you just start taking action. Like, thankfully, I finally got my act together with the podcast and started taking action. But if I was still waiting for the perfect time or the perfect circumstances or until I knew everything about everything, I still wouldn't have started my podcast today. So just start taking action, like feel the fear and do it anyway. And when you do fail, because you will, like inevitably in whatever journey you're on, you're going to fail. But when you do, just get back up and keep going. Like, don't let it be a chip on your shoulder. Just get back up, keep going. And there is actually a famous quote. I'd be curious if you know who this is before I say it. But the quote is, this is from a basketball player, a very, very famous basketball player. And he said, I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I have been trusted to take the game winning shot and missed. And I've failed over and over and over again in my life. And that is why I succeed. And that is Michael Jordan, my friends. Michael Jordan, known to be the MVP, the like most glorified basketball player, has missed more than 9,000 shots, has lost more than 300 games, and even the game winning shots, you guys, the game winning shots. Talk about the amount of pressure, the amount of eyeballs on him, and he has missed the game winning shot 26 times. He has failed so many times, countless times, and that's literally what he attributes his success to, is because he has just failed more times than the next person has. So I'm like, don't see failure as a negative thing. Again, it's like flip that script and go, okay, this isn't an issue. This is an opportunity. Like failure is not necessarily a bad thing. It's just moving you that much closer to success. So, anyway, guys, I hope you found this episode helpful, encouraging, inspirational. But I also hope that you actually go do something about it. Like, whatever thing that you're putting off right now, stop putting it off. Like take the little baby action steps in the right direction. Like don't let this just be like a woo woo episode for you where it makes you feel really good. Like actually go implement some of this and so that you can actually move the needle closer to your goals. So that's what I'll leave you guys with. I hope this helps. And thank you so much again for being a part of this community, for being a part of the muscle makeover. And I'll catch you guys on the next episode.